Secondly, the ceasefire has to be organized in such a way with Russia that the coalition of the willing can play an active role. We are actually working towards that. And thirdly, of course, all partners in the coalition have to go through their domestic processes to decide what contribution they will make. Germany will continue to support politically, financially and militarily. That could mean, for example, that after a ceasefire for the Ukraine in a neighboring NATO area, we would have a presence. As for the type and scope of a German contribution, obviously that has to be decided by the German government and parliament once these conditions have been specified and clarified. For me and for the German government, I would say that for the moment, nothing is excluded. As of now, in the fourth year of the war, Germany is Kyiv's strongest supporter. And after a ceasefire, Germany will accept responsibility for the security of Ukraine and for the continent as a whole. We also discussed today how after a ceasefire we could promote the reconstruction of Ukraine. We are working on a package for that among European partners in close coordination with the USA. The President of the Commission today explained today how the Commission could contribute to that. And this reconstruction is indissociable from the question of security guarantees. Economic strength will be an indispensable guarantee for ensuring that in the future Ukraine can present a credible deterrent to Russia. So, dear Volodymyr, this also means certain expectations of Ukraine, as we've discussed in Brussels. Ukraine must make sure that its young men can find decent jobs in their own country rather than traveling to Germany, Poland or France. This is something that we have already discussed in Brussels together, and I think that this is an expectation that Ukraine can meet and will meet. So, ladies and gentlemen, no one can say today whether the arms will be silenced in Ukraine in 6 weeks or in 6 months, but we are working tirelessly towards that peace. We'll obviously have to make compromises. We will probably not be able to achieve the ideal of a perfectly designed peace, not as much as we would like, but we have to learn not from books, but from the existing geopolitical circumstances going forward in the next 3 months. We will go about this with perseverance, realism, and a clear view of what is best for Europe. That's to say, a stable ceasefire, strong security guarantees, and peace in Europe, linking Ukrainians and Europeans that we form together. So once again, thank you for this excellent meeting today. It really was worth coming together in such great numbers. Never happened before in the coalition of the willing. We've never had so many people in one room as we had today in Paris. And that shows clearly to Russia that they have to stop the war. There's no point continuing it. And as coalition of the willing, we are willing to work with Ukraine and the US to find a way through to permanent or stable peace in Europe. So all the best for Ukraine. Thank you very much. Questions. We'll take questions now. Go ahead. Good evening. Claire Gatinoir from Le Monde. Good evening, presidents, prime ministers, heads of state and government and special envoys. President Macron, this is the 15th time, as you said, that the coalition of the willing has come together to produce security guarantees for Ukraine, hoping for the support of the United States. And now Trump has not firmly committed to American support. After what happened in Venezuela and the threats to Greenland sovereignty, can Europeans still trust our American ally? Don't you think we should think of security guarantees without the United States? And regarding Greenland, in the light of what was said this morning, should we consider deploying European troops to protect that territory and to protect this? Is it because you want to protect links with the United States you haven't condemned the intervention in Venezuela? Thank you. That's a multiple question, and I wish you a Happy New Year. On the question of Venezuela, which I think is not really connected with today's matters, diplomacy has its own roots and ways. French diplomacy has already expressed itself. We have to see that as a coherent message. I think I've been very clear about that. Regarding today's matters, the presence of President Trump's special envoys today and the commitments by President Trump himself, in particular what he said at the meeting in Mar-a-Lago at the end of last year with President Zelensky, that was about an American commitment to take responsibility. This meeting, I think, is a milestone in the process that we defend, is in line with the American interests. As what France has been defending for several years is a more independent Europe with more strategic autonomy. That's to say, Europe taking responsibility, greater responsibility for its security, taking into account NATO, but taking on a greater share. In his first mandate and in this one too, President Trump has said that Europeans must bear a greater share of the burden. That's what he's asking us to do, and it makes sense. So all the work of these recent months through the coalition of the willing is to get the Europeans together. But there's also Canada, New Zealand, Japan, United States, and the Canadian Prime Minister in particular was with us today, which is a very strong signal, and is fully committed to these security guarantees. So the coalition of the willing is the beating heart of this support to Ukraine, offering security guarantees. So what we're saying is the day after the ceasefire, this is how we will provide these different moments of support to Ukraine, in particular through a new format for the Ukrainian army that would deter Russia. So in this context, the support and participation of the United States are very important for a lot of countries, many NATO member countries, because American capabilities, sometimes they are the only ones who have the ability to provide certain guarantees. All that is of key importance. Recent weeks have illustrated a change. As Chancellor Merz said in our meeting in Berlin, that was already a milestone with a new step forward in SACEUR. That's to say the American authorities in charge of military matters in Europe, they were all involved. So there are these different levels of security guarantees where the United States of America have clarified their participation, in particular with respect to monitoring. That's to say, surveillance of the front line, and the American observation capabilities are absolutely vital, and that's been confirmed. So my point is that in recent months we have put together a coherent and meaningful construct. The Americans want us to do more, and we can. We now have a coalition of the willing providing guarantees. We also have American participation through its resources, let's say the backstop. And in that context, the statements by President Emmanuel Macron, along with President Zelenskiy at the end of last year, and confirmed by the relevant generals in the chain of command, and as confirmed by Mrs. Kushner and Witkoff, that confirms a guarantee on the part of the Americans. So I have no reason to doubt the sincerity of that commitment, given their statement today and all the work that has been done with the United States in order to design this scheme. And as UN Charter signatory and members of NATO, they are allies to us here in Europe, and it's as such that they are here today, and they have worked alongside us in recent weeks. Thank you.
Could you say that the security guarantees are ready to be put in place? And what about the legal framework? What would be the institutional basis? Would that be an invitation for a multinational force? There's a technical issue. The interpreters can't hear.
Thank you for the question. Firstly, I think that the members of the coalition of the willing have to work hand in hand with the United States, and these guarantees have to be legally binding. For the Americans, this means that this has to be supported by the American Congress, and we very much hope that will happen. All the documents are ready for signature, and we hope that will now go through. As for this declaration, the Paris Security Declaration, it paves the way for this process that will be legally binding, because for most of the coalition members, it is necessary to have the support of Parliament, and we count on them for that. Good evening. Bundeskanzler, Mr. Merz, I'm from the Allgemeine Zeitung. You talked about major milestones. One of them is perhaps that Germany is willing to make a military contribution to the coalition. Do you think that's enough to put forces in a neighboring NATO area? Could you say a bit more about that? There are expectations. You said that Germany is the biggest supporter. So do you think we should up our military contribution? Thank you, Ms. Wiegel, for that question. Yes, we discussed that at length amongst us today. I've said on behalf of the government that, of course, we're willing to participate in the security guarantee. Exactly how? At the moment, that's an open issue because the whole package as a security guarantee has not yet been fully addressed. We have some very specific proposals available. If Germany is going to be in, that will mean there has to be a decision by the German government, followed by confirmation from the parliament. So I will make proposals to the government and the parliament, perhaps once we have a ceasefire, and when in the coalition of the willing we have a consensus view on how we should proceed. We're moving in that direction, but I said in discussions today that it can be the right thing to do both things. That's to say, to place troops in Ukraine, but that means strengthening Ukrainian troops, first and foremost, but also in a neighboring state, perhaps place further troops that would be available for intervention should there be a fresh Russian aggression. I'm saying if, this is all on the conditional, because the total package has not been negotiated, but the basic premise for all this is a ceasefire agreement with Russia, and that then has to be secured with the appropriate military support to Ukraine. And I want to stress once again, it's not just militarily supporting Ukraine, talking about military support for peace and freedom in Europe, and that is why we are also committing to that. It's not just about the territorial integrity of Ukraine. It's about the lasting maintenance of the political freedom and peace that we have in Europe. We've always protected that, and deterrence has been the case of the last 70 years, and I imagine that will be the case of decades going forward as well. Thank you. That's the end of the press conference. Thank you all very much, and good night. And Happy New Year once again to you all.